Hello everybody, Ben Rogers here, the Raptors Digest. We've all heard the crazy trade that happened, the Kawhi Leonard deal, but there's a forgotten player that the Raptors received in this deal who could be a massive steal and one of the huge parts of the trade, Riker?
Yeah.
The
Danny
Raptors
Green.
also picked up Danny Green. What's the story on Danny Green?
Danny Green, I don't know how much people know him. Obviously, they know him as a perennial San Antonio Spur, a bit of a spot-up three-point guy. Of course, we'll talk a bit about how his productivity has kind of waned in this most recent season. But until that point, he's been a very consistent 3 and D guy. I wasn't even necessarily that familiar, obviously, coming from the San Antonio system. You have to be good at defense, but... To get into sort of his past, of course, he was a UNC guy, and he was drafted 46th. Reason being, he wasn't the first best player, wasn't the second best player, wasn't even the third best player. He was on the championship team with Ty Lawson, Tyler Hansbrough, Wayne Ellington. So his sort of flight to get to the NBA, his path to get to the NBA was, 46th, cut by a team. 20 games for Cleveland, then cut, but he finally made it into the San Antonio system and kind of became the guy that he is today. So, pretty boring, or relatively average, I guess, story. He had to work a little bit harder than a lot of players to get sort of that spot. But what's impressive is that over the last 6.5 seasons, he's asserted himself as a starting lineup player, which is what I think is exciting for the Toronto Raptors. Not only did they get, he'll be overshadowed by Kawhi Leonard, but not only did we get this superstar, we also got another starting player, which is good.
And he's not just an average starting player, because he's been a starter on a championship roster. Danny Green is, a phenomenal 3 and D player, and it's the type of player that we want inside the Raptor system, inside of Nick Nurse offense, because we have the stars around. And the thing that really strikes me about Danny Green's career is consistency, especially with the San Antonio Spurs and during that huge playoff run with Tim Duncan and all that. He's just been such a consistent player, being able to hit shots, hit threes, play defense. And the problem with the 3 and D guys, Terrence Ross, DeMario Carroll, even CJ Miles, even though he's not necessarily a great defensive guy, but the inconsistency has killed us. And I think getting a 3 and D player that's can consistently do both. Maybe not get crazy hot or anything like that, but you can rely on him. I think that would be such a pickup, such an asset for the Raptors going forward.
Well, let's not jump the gun too quick here. There may be a 3 and D curse, 3 and D man curse in the Toronto Raptors system, because like you said, Terrence Ross, DeMario Carroll, we've had guys now that we bring in and seemingly on a high, and then they just end up disappointing the heck out of us. And then we have to get rid of their incredibly high contracts. At least contracts-wise, we have a little more flexibility this time around. But here's the hoping that we're not going to get stuck in sort of the same routine as, kind of overhyping somebody for their three-point shooting abilities. But essentially, we can get right into the stats now. He's about an 8-point a game guy, 8-9 points a game, which isn't horrible. He's not an offensive creator. He's really just a guy that's standing around. He's knocking down shots. Regular season is not the best indication as towards what his ability is. He's around a 36% 3-point shooter. It's kind of dropped since last season, but I think that the issue with Danny Green, and I need to pull up here the playoff stats, is that every season prior to the 2017-2018 season, so we're going 2016 all the way back to 2011, his three-point shooting in the playoffs, it's kind of fluctuated, but he's been one year 48%, 47%, 50%, 34%. Last season, of course, they only played 5 games and got dominated by the Golden State Warriors. They only took 1 off of them. He shot only 25% from 3, 26% from the field. And that's in 20 minutes per game. So that's the issue, is that his three-point shooting, and I didn't watch a lot of San Antonio Spurs, mainly because I couldn't stand to watch the Golden State Warriors play any series. It's infuriating to watch. But perhaps the stifling defense could be a reason for that, or perhaps, he's 31 years old, he's been in the league for a long time. Do you think that maybe his 3-point shooting ability is on the way down, or do you think that it was really just that one situation that he's in and he's able to kind of bounce back and get back to consistent shooting?
Well, sample size is key. And when you look at the circumstances of the San Antonio Spurs last season, obviously Kawhi didn't play in that playoff series against Golden State. The Spurs were just depleted of talent, and they went up against the best team in the NBA. So, obviously, he's performed in the playoffs in the past, and last year was a bit of an aberration. But they played 5 games, small sample size, and if you're looking for Danny Green to be your creator and, your go-to guy to get you a bucket, he can't do that. But if you put good players around him, strong players, which we have in Toronto, that could get him open shots and swing the ball and get him open, and you're playing more different teams than the Golden State Warriors, that 3-point percentage will definitely increase, and he's shown it in the past. So obviously his numbers were a bit down last season, but three-point shooting, that lasts with someone their whole career. That's something that very rarely wanes. And the San Antonio roster wasn't very strong last season. They were just basically relying on LaMarcus Aldridge and Greg Popovich's system. They had a couple other guys, but so I think putting Danny Green back with a very strong roster around him, including Kawhi, I think his numbers will go right back up, right to where they want them to be. And if Nick Nurse, everything we've been promised about Nick Nurse comes true, and we're still running that free-flowing offense, and I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's certainly, when you take out the offensive creator and now you're asking on guys who are normally, the offense plays through them, to have a bigger role, then of course you're going to have worse shot selection, you're going to have more pressure put on the shooters. When you have guys that take off the offensive burden and creating shots, and then you allow them to be sort of the guys that get dished to on a set, then that's really their bread and butter. So hopefully that's sort of what they'll fall back into. And I agree with you. That's how guys like Ray Allen or Kyle Korver can be 50 years old, 60 years old, 70 years old in the league and still playing, because all they have to do is stand around the 3-point line, sort of play defense at times, and shoot threes. Of course, that's an exaggeration, but you get the point.
Yeah, and another thing about Danny Green, too. Just a couple seasons ago, I think you said 2017?
2017, yeah.
He was second team All-NBA defense. So, his defense is still there. He's still a very good perimeter defender, which is going to be phenomenal in this Raptors lineup.
And he's not too old yet, only 31. So let's talk about that then. Let's break down this for the final 2 or 3 minutes of the pod. One, let's talk about what does the offense look like for any Raptors lineup, nothing in particular. Now that we have Kyle Lowry, shooter, Danny Green, shooter, Kawhi Leonard can do it all, OG probably developing a shot, right? We have all these guys that have the ability to shoot. What does the Raptors offense in general look like?
Well, anyone that's been listening to the podcast, we've been ranting about it all year. Nick Nurse wants to run a fast-paced 3-point shooting offense. That's the mantra of Nick Nurse. That's why we hired this new coaching staff. That's why we took in his offense, because it was all his game plan last season, and now he gets full control over it. So Masai Ujiri is bringing in guys that would effectively play in this system. And the addition of Danny Green and obviously Kawhi, but we've talked about Kawhi a lot, it's going to fit perfect. We can run that fast-paced system. We can, play the modern NBA way.
No, you're right.
Along with a bunch of defense. So
because we trade away DeMar. I mean, he was developing his 3-point shot, but for better 3-point shooters, trade away Yak. Now we're a faster team, a smaller team. The trade is making more sense in terms of the coach that we have, the play style that we want. Let's talk about defense, though. We say Lowry's a thick boy. He's working always on on D. We got the length of OG. Now the length of Kawhi, one-time Defensive Player of the Year. We have Danny Green, two-time Defensive Player of the Year. Danny Green, all-defensive player, all-team D. We have just a lot of guys. Siakam, we have a lot of length now and a lot of defensive ability. What is the Raptors' defensive rating going to look like?
Honestly, if we have so many different lineups we can throw out, I think we could definitely be knocked, because we were a top 5 defense last season with DeMar DeRozan in our starting lineup. Love DeMar, phenomenal offensive guy, notoriously not a strong defender. We just replaced, 36, 38 minutes of DeMar DeRozan with that amount of time of Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green. That's, we were top 5 defense last season. I think we could definitely be knocking on the door for first, if not have it in the bag.
Okay, what do you think about stacking up in the East? Number 1 defense in the East?
Oh, yeah. No, I'm saying the league.
Number 1 offense in the East?
It's going to be interesting to see what happens. We definitely have the personnel to do it, but it's going to be tough in the East, definitely. Well, but it's going to be tough to compete with the Warriors.
There you go. Hot take.
Yeah. Well, anyways, let us know what you guys think. Was Danny Green a steal in this trade? Could he have a strong impact this season? And what do you think how this impacts the Raptors defense? Because, obviously me and Ryker said it's a big deal. So let us know in the comment section. Check out the Instagram, the Twitter, all that cool stuff. You're the best for listening.
Cheers.